From A&E, this is Biography This Week. For September 26, 1998, Biography This Week with Karen Stone.
57 minutes.
That one drilled deep left field. When it comes down, he leads him again.
1 ball and 2 strikes.
This one is well struck.
This week, the race that has captivated America entered its final days. Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire spent their summer chasing the ghosts of Babe Ruth and Roger Maris, finally breaking baseball's most sacred record. And they're not finished yet. For the moment, McGwire has the most home runs, but there's 1 day remaining in the regular season. Regardless of who finishes on top, both men have astonished baseball fans and everyone else, and have helped rejuvenate the national pastime, which many felt was actually past its time. This season, baseball came roaring back into the spotlight as the New York Yankees kept on winning, and Iron Man Cal Ripken kept on playing, until he finally took a day off for the first time in 16 years. But the sport's most riveting drama features McGwire and Sosa, whose dignified duel has provided a welcome diversion from the turbulence on Wall Street and the tawdriness in Washington. Both sluggers will be our biography this week. We begin with McGwire, a home run machine who doesn't just hit balls out of the park, he launches them. Before this season began, McGwire's son asked him to hit 65 home runs. Mark McGwire didn't disappoint his boy.
The big sluggers have always been the most mythic heroes of the most American of all sports, baseball. This season, Mark McGwire of the St. Louis Cardinals and Sammy Sosa of the Chicago Cubs have accomplished what many storied players of the past, including Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, and Hank Aaron, had never done. Hit 60 home runs in one season. Only a handful of players in this century would accomplish this feat. The first was the legendary Yankee, Babe Ruth. In 1927, Ruth belted his 60th home run for that season, and it was long thought that his record would never be broken. Then, 34 years later, another young man in Yankee pinstripes did just that.
Here's the windup. Fastball hit deep to right.
On October the 1st, Roger Maris hit his 61st home run of the 1961 season. He outdistanced his teammate Mickey Mantle in a close race for the home run crown. In fact, the fans were disappointed that the more popular Mantle had not been the one to break the Babe's record. Roger Maris was never given full credit for his achievement. The stress created by breaking the Ruth record wore Maris down. He left baseball a bitter man and died of cancer at the age of 51. The Maris record, though, would stand for another 37 years until this man, 34-year-old Mark McGwire, stepped up to the plate on September the 8th, 1998.
First pitch, rocket deep to left. He did it.
When he sent his 62nd homer of the season over the left field wall, he surpassed the Maris record and made baseball history.
One of the best moments in our lives right now. This is great.
I saw history, and my son did too.
I got the ticket to show my kids, you know. I was at the game where, you know, history was made.
62, 62, 62.
McGwire's 10-year-old son Matthew was there to greet his father at home plate. And the family of Roger Maris, the man whose record he now owned, was waiting to congratulate McGwire, the pride of the St. Louis Cardinals. Mark McGwire was destined from childhood to become baseball's golden boy. He was born on October the 1st, 1963, in the affluent Los Angeles suburb of Pomona. He grew up in Claremont, California, where his father, Dr. John McGwire, a dentist, was his first coach. Mark began playing Little League Baseball at the age of 8 and hit a home run in his first time at bat.
He would hit them over into the other Little League fence where you'd have the other team all going, look out, you know, heads up. And
He always seemed to clear everything by 20 to 50 feet.
Mark was the second of 5 active sons. The McGwire household was a virtual training camp for the boys who shared a love of sports.
The garage had a speed bag for boxing and a heavy bag, some weights. There was even a putting green in the backyard. I mean, it was a dream come true if you're a little boy.
Mark's mother, Ginger, a full-time homemaker, spent up to $500 a week to feed her brood, who would all grow to over 6 feet and weigh over 200 pounds. By junior high, Mark was already a force to be reckoned with on any field.
First time I ever went golfing was with him, and I felt like this big. I mean, he could hit the ball so far when we were about 12, 13 years old, and I could barely even hit the ball off the tee. And I mean, he's just an athlete every which way you look.
Still, with all the focus on sports, there remained a sensitive side to Mark, which he would try to conceal as he matured.
In his family, you know, it was a very big, physical jock sort of family with 5 boys. And he said, you know, we didn't have sisters, and we didn't talk about feelings, and we didn't talk about emotions. And he said, we didn't talk about love. He said it was like going into a dark room and sort of trying to feel your way around with your hands.
One place where Mark could express himself was on the playing field. Between 1977 and 1981, the towering red-headed teenager was a star on the Damien Catholic High School basketball team. A standout also on the school's baseball team, he was known as much for his pitching ability as for his hitting power.
His senior year, his fastball was going about 90 miles an hour. And I always used to say, don't get too good because, you know, a boy of his size, if he's a little wild, he scares these high school kids.
Oh, yeah.
McGwire's athletic gifts were being recognized, but the spotlight was never something he valued over his privacy.
When he would get trophies as a kid, he would hide them in the closet. Big guys are kind of like that sometimes. They get enough attention all the time. They don't want more emotional attention than they're getting.
Off the field, it was clear that McGwire's hard work ethic and admirable character were equally appreciated by those who came to know him well as a sportsman.
He never was any problem. Never had to worry about him being on detention, missing practice because of that. Never had to worry about him being ineligible because of grades.
In 1981, McGwire's grades and pitching skill won him a scholarship to the University of Southern California. The player known as Big Mac decided to switch from pitching to become a big-time hitter. Since a batter would play more frequently, he followed a no-nonsense training program.
At USC, there is a lot of pressure, and all of us put on our ball players because I always say my tastes are simple. All I wanted was perfection. So to work really toward that was a goal. But I think Mark worked hard to make himself the best he could be.
McGwire's dedication got results. By the time he was a junior, he broke a school record, hitting 32 homers in one season.
We nicknamed him that junior year Big Check because we all knew he was going to get a big check. So everyone on the team, instead of Big Mac or whatever names we were calling him, we changed him to Big Check because he could do no wrong. He was going to, you know, sign for the big bucks, and you could tell he was going to be a star.
In 1984, Mark McGwire was named to the United States Olympic baseball team. In exhibitions, McGwire considered the U.S. team unbeatable.
I don't think there's any way we can lose the gold medal down there in Los Angeles. I played against all the teams that will play in the Olympics except Italy, and by far we have the best talent out there.
Unfortunately, Japan took the gold medal, beating the U.S. team in the final game. Mark was deeply disappointed. Shortly after the Olympics, he was drafted by the Oakland Athletics. He left school to join the A's minor league system. He also made some changes in his private life in 1984. He married Kathleen Hughes, the girl he'd been dating since they were students at USC.
Kathy was a year older ahead of Mark, and she's a brilliant girl, outstanding student at USC, and we felt it was a great couple.
By 1987, the 23-year-old McGwire had been called up to the majors by the Oakland A's and came under intense media attention as he smashed the league home run record for a rookie. He got some good advice from a teammate he considered a mentor, former Yankee home run king Reggie Jackson.
I know right now he's doing his best to stay within himself, to keep his same routine, not to get different with his teammates, not to be different in the clubhouse, to keep his sense of humor, and not to get too cocky because he's got the biggest numbers in baseball right now.
McGwire went on to hit an astounding 49 homers that season and was named American League Rookie of the Year for 1987. It looked like he had all the right stuff to be a superstar.
He's real agile. He's got a great arm. He's got good hands. I mean, he reminds me a little bit of like a Pete Rose. If one year you came into town or started the season and you needed Mark in left field or right field, third base, first base, you could play him there. He's very, very athletic.
At the end of the season, he was one home run short of 50. But he made an extraordinary decision to go home before the season was over. It was one he would never regret.
A good indication of McGwire, the man, was that on the final day of the season, with a chance to hit his 50th home run, which was something that hadn't been done in the majors in the 1980s, he bypassed that chance to be with his wife for the birth of his son.
Mark McGwire would always take delight in being a devoted father to his son Matthew. But he would pay his dues for future glory on the field with the pain of injury, the end of his marriage, and living a life without the privacy he cherished. Mark McGwire's life seemed to be following an almost fictional scenario as he began fulfilling his childhood dreams. He followed up his sensational rookie year with the Oakland A's with another impressive run in 1988. The 25-year-old phenomenon went all the way to his first World Series, sharing home run honors with his teammate, Jose Canseco.
And these two young players were nicknamed the Bash Brothers for their customary habit of bashing forearms to celebrate a home run by either one of them, and they were pretty frequent.
But the favored A's were defeated by the Dodgers in the World Series in 5 games. For Mark McGwire, things were not going well at home either. He and his wife Kathy divorced, ending their 4-year marriage, saying later they were both too young when they wed. They agreed to share custody of their son Matthew, and Kathy eventually remarried. McGwire would continue to struggle with balancing his private life and the demands of his sport. He had a rocky start to the 1989 season.
I don't think any hitter wants to go through the season like I had. I went through about 3.5 months where I didn't do anything.
As the season progressed, McGwire was more relaxed and optimistic, and the A's again won the American League pennant. But the 1989 World Series, in which the Oakland A's took on their neighbors, the San Francisco Giants, would be remembered for more than just baseball. On October the 17th, with a crowd of 60,000 packed into Candlestick Park, an earthquake struck, cutting off television coverage of the game.
Second base, so the Oakland A's take. I'll tell you what, we're having an earthquake.
When the trembling stopped, those in the stadium were unaware of the devastation caused by the big quake. The A's would go on to win the series when play resumed, but it was a bittersweet victory. There was death and destruction all over the Bay Area. There would be no parades or champagne for the A's, but their victory helped to heal their broken and burned city.
A lot of people later on said that the A's achievement helped reunify the Oakland area, and in fact the Bay Area as a whole, and give them a point of pride. Nonetheless, it was somewhat of a muted celebration.
In 1990, the A's were again favored to win the World Series, but were swept by the Cincinnati Reds in 4 games, with McGwire performing below par. He had been awarded the Gold Glove for his outstanding play as a first baseman, but by 1991, his hitting game had totally fallen apart. It was a slump that even the experts found baffling. It would be the worst season of his career. His batting average was a shockingly low .201.
A lot of people really had some misgivings about whether he would ever restore his former ability again.
McGwire knew he had to take charge of his own destiny.
When he had such a bad year and his divorce had really hurt him and scarred him, that he decided, I've got to make a change. And he was sort of at his low point. You know, he was ready to quit baseball. And he realized, as big and tough as he was, he needed help. And he got therapy. And so you don't see jocks, especially big guys like him, big heroes, talk about therapy, but therapy really changed his life.
McGwire was also changing his body. He added 20 pounds of muscle to his already sizable frame with a renewed concentration on weightlifting. His forearms grew to a massive 17 1/2 inches around. It was clear in 1992 his physical regime was reaping rewards. He hit 42 homers and seemed well on his way back to his old form. His momentum carried through to the beginning of the 1993 season with 28 hits and 9 homers in the first month. Then that May, he tore a tendon in his left foot and missed 100 games.
Over the next couple of years, he had the foot problem. He was injured all the time. I mean, that just created a point in his career which a lot of guys would have gone backwards, but he worked really hard to overcome it.
Injuries continued to plague him through the start of the 1995 season, but he did bounce back again. When he returned to the team that spring, he set a new mark for the most home runs per times at bat in Major League history. McGwire was in full health again by 1996, and his bat began to sizzle. He hit 52 home runs, and the buzz started about breaking Roger Maris's record of 61. He kept the streak going in the first half of 1997 with 34 homers, but toward the end of the season, he was traded to St. Louis. The A's could no longer afford the salary he could command as a free agent that year. McGwire was, at first, loath to leave his home state, and the trade took its toll on his pursuit of the Maris record.
In McGwire's case, there was an adjustment factor, and he had probably his most severe home run drought in recent years, right surrounding the time of the trade.
The Maris record eluded him, but by season's end, he still had 58 home runs, the highest total in the majors that year. He was the first player since Babe Ruth to hit over 50 home runs in 2 consecutive seasons. The Cardinals signed him to a 3-year, $30 million contract extension, but the decision to stay wasn't just about money. St. Louis fell in love with the big slugger, and for McGwire, the feeling was mutual.
He said he just can't experience what it's like to go to a place where grandpa, dad, and son and grandson all are Cardinal fans, and they're all just, you know, attention is on him 2 hours before the game. They're lined up to see him afterwards. They just love him, and he said it's just been awesome.
Team also provided as much opportunity as possible for McGwire to spend time with his son. Matthew traveled with his dad during the summer. McGwire has also maintained a close relationship with his former wife and her new husband.
His wife's second husband, a wonderful man named Tom Williamson, couldn't be nicer. And I asked him, you know, what is that like when you're trying to be the stepdad and in comes this superhero? What's it like trying to be the father who's got to be there when he goes? And he says, it's no problem because Mark and I get along so well. And he's such a great, simple, nice man who has no ego in this.
Although McGwire is most comfortable within the confines of his own family, he began to speak out publicly for those less fortunate. The foundation he established has been dedicated to addressing the problems of sexual and physical abuse of children. He pledged $1 million a year to this effort in an emotional statement in which a new Mark McGwire emerged.
It's going to be something new for me. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be dealing with, hopefully, sexually and physically abused children. Wow.
For once, he wasn't afraid to show his emotions and his feelings. And this is a guy who didn't. He used to be all closed in. And that was just sort of the very end and the proof that he had changed as a man. And I think he's, in a strange way, that's one of his proudest moments.
As for his career in baseball, the best was yet to come, 1998. This was the season McGwire had been preparing for his whole life. By the end of August, he passed the 50 home run mark for the 3rd season in a row, something no other player had ever done. Now, as the season narrowed to its final weeks, only McGwire and the Chicago Cubs' Sammy Sosa were within reach of the Maris record.
This is such pressure. I mean, McGwire, the first day of spring training, was talking about how if he hit 59 home runs, he would be remembered as a failure.
But he didn't fail. On September the 5th, McGwire caught up with Babe Ruth's best of 60 home runs. He would now be as closely examined by the press as he was exalted by his fans. It was just 2 days after he reached Babe Ruth's mark that he went for the magic 61 and tied the Roger Maris record. It was also his father's 61st birthday. The Maris family was there to take part in the moment along with McGwire's parents. As he came within striking distance of the Maris record, stories aimed at discrediting McGwire began surfacing concerning the nutritional supplements he was taking, supplements which are permitted by Major League Baseball. It was charged that his power at the plate was due to steroid-like substances. Those who followed his career disagree.
He did hit 49 home runs the year before it was invented. Do I think McGwire broke the record because he took this substance? No. Do I think it helps him over a 4 or 5 year period? It probably does.
The task now was to make the record his own with a home run that would surpass Maris. He would have his chance on September the 8th in another game against the Cubs at Busch Stadium. He came to the plate in the 4th inning. On the 3rd pitch, he hit a line drive that narrowly cleared the left field wall. Mark McGwire now had sole possession of the Major League record for most home runs in a season, but he paid his respects to the man he had overtaken.
McGwire was extraordinarily sensitive to what must have been a tremendous mixture of emotions of the children of Roger Maris. And when he went into the stands to greet them and to embrace them following his record-setting 62nd home run, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, I don't think.
When I touched this bat tonight before the game, I knew tonight was going to be the night. And I can honestly now say I can rest my bat alongside Roger Maris' bat in the Hall of Fame, and I'm damn proud of it.
A future place in the Hall of Fame may now be assured for Mark McGwire, but this season of glory isn't over yet. One thing is certain, generations of baseball fans will never forget the big redhead from California who made this season one for the books.
Less than a week after Mark McGwire hit number 62, his new record was equaled by Sammy Sosa of the Chicago Cubs. Sosa received far less attention, but his life story on and off the field is a lesson in tenacity, desire, and faith. When Biography This Week continues, Sammy Sosa is on deck. Stay with us. Welcome back to Biography This Week and our look at Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, whose exploits have moved them from the sports page to the front page. We now turn to Sosa, almost certain to be the National League's most valuable player. This has been a career season for the Chicago Cub, long known for swinging hard and striking out often. When Sosa found patience and discipline, he also found himself locked in a duel with baseball's greatest home run hitter. Sammy Sosa claims to feel very little pressure from the heat of the home run race. Real pressure was growing up dirt poor in the Dominican Republic.
Sosa drives one, deep left field. If it's fair, it's going to be a grand slam. That ball is gone. Grand slam, number 63 for Sammy Sosa. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
That ball hit high in the air, deep toward right. At the wall, that ball is gone. A home run, Sosa.
This is San Pedro de Macorís in the Dominican Republic. Samuel Sosa was born here November the 12th, 1969, on a poor street in a rundown neighborhood on the wrong side of the tracks. His father, Juan, died when Sammy was 5. His mother, Lucretia, did washing and cleaned houses to support her 5 boys and 2 girls in a religious household.
I remember that the mother had to go every day to wash clothes to keep them, to bring food to the house.
Sammy worked more than he went to school. shining shoes and washing cars to help the family. But in his neighborhood, no one was too poor to play baseball.
When I was a little kid, I mean, every day we come here, every day.
As a child, Sammy entered a baseball system more than 100 years old. Sugar plantations formed teams and leagues to help them hang on to seasonal workers waiting for the next sugar crop.
He started playing when he was 15 and started his job of baseball. And yes, he used to say, "Mommy, I will make it, because what my dad wasn't able to give you, I'm going to give you. I'm going to take care of you." And God helped him.
On the playgrounds of San Pedro de Macorís, Sammy is remembered as a cheerful kid with more than his share of energy and confidence. He idolized baseball stars from the Caribbean, like Pittsburgh's Roberto Clemente.
Everything he do was thinking, I'm gonna be a star. Someday I wanna be a star. He just said, I know that I can do it, because even he was poor, he always have a good sense of humor, and he always has in his mind, I have to be something in the life. I have to be an important person in the life. I have to work hard because my mother needs it, my family needs it, and I think I'm the bigger in the family, and I have to give the example.
Among local kids, Sammy was an above-average ball player. He used a glove made from a crushed milk carton and tightly wound socks for a ball. One day, he made an impression on one of his shoeshine customers who would forever be a part of his life.
There was like 200 kids in the square shining shoes. And this one kid come up with a big bright smile, and we knew him as Mikey, which was his nickname to his friends. But it was Sammy, and we used to bring him stuff back from the United States back to the island, and Sammy asked for a glove, and so I went and looked at a lot of gloves, and I said to myself, I got to get a big glove because he had a big set of hands, and so I got him a blue glove, which he still wears today, a bluish glove.
By the early 80s, most big league teams had a baseball school in the Dominican Republic. A baseball career was the best alternative to a life spent cutting sugarcane 16 hours a day for $2. Sammy made the rounds. He signed one contract when he was 15 that was canceled because he was underage. In 1984, the Texas Rangers came calling.
As a scout, you become very observant of things. And I remember his shoes probably were older than he was at that time. I mean, he had some old shoes. But you know what? He got off the bus, and when I first saw him, you can tell that there was a desire to, hey, let's go. I'm ready to show you what I have.
Like most of the players from the Dominican Republic, Sammy was thought to have a lot more ability and heart than patience. Dominicans have a reputation as eager to swing at every pitch rather than willing to settle for a base on balls.
It's an old joke about Dominican ball players that you can't walk off an island, and therefore they come to the plate very aggressive, free-swinging, high-spirited ball players. But you know, that comes close to I won't say a racial, but a cultural stereotype. Latins, what an excitable, undisciplined, perfect rubbish. Great ball players.
Young players in Latin America do not go into the baseball draft system that often pays huge bonuses. Instead, kids like Sammy Sosa sign young and work cheap and are glad for the opportunity. Sammy, though, took a stand.
The more I negotiated with him, the more I started to like him, because I sensed that there's a difference here between him and other kids. He felt he knew he had how much he was worth, and he basically believed, hey, look, I'm going to stick to my guns. I mean, I want to sign, but he showed me principles, and I like that. I like the fact that he stuck to what he believed his worth was. Eventually, I says, okay, you are 4,000, I'm a 3,000. Why don't we settle 3,500?
An 18-year-old Sammy left his family and moved to the United States. He started in the Texas Rangers minor league system.
Once he started playing, he did things in the minor leagues that I was like, wow, how good is this kid going to be?
But the baseball came easier for Sammy and his teammates than the adjustment to America.
And it's got to be tough. I mean, I remember once going to Gastonia, my wife and I, and
there was like 6 of them living in one place, and there was all Latinos. And I asked them to take them out to dinner, and I said, where do you want to go? Yeah, they said, oh, McDonald's, because that's the only thing they knew how to order, was going to McDonald's. They ordered the same thing every night. They had the same food.
In June of 1989, Sammy Sosa made it to the big leagues, playing for the Texas Rangers.
He was a young, wild stallion when I knew him in Texas, real young. He could run like the wind and throw. He could run a lot better than he runs now. Had a very good arm, had power factor, wild swinger. Might have been 19 when he got traded.
Sosa headed for Chicago, to the White Sox in the American League. There was a debate as to whether he was a hot dog or just tried too hard to be a success.
Sammy was a raw talent is what he was. He was a free-swinging young guy, and like they say, you never walk off to take a base on balls off the island. You swing the bat, you hit yourself off of it, and he was swinging the bat, and he was undisciplined at the plate, and he's undisciplined in a lot of things that he did in the game.
He stayed in close contact with his family and visited San Pedro whenever he could. Around this time, Sammy spotted a young woman in a discotheque back home. He sent over a note to handle the introductions.
I met Sammy in my country, one disco, and he bring me a paper. They say, can you please dance with me? This is gonna be the beautiful relation. And I say, I'm sorry, I never danced with nobody that I don't know, with somebody I don't know. When he see me, he say, oh wow, look at that woman. And I say, oh wow. You know, I like that. I like him when I see him, I like him. But I don't know he's a ball player.
6 months later, they were married. But on the field, he was slumping and got the nickname Sammy Sosa. He was sent to the minor leagues by the White Sox. When Larry Himes, now running the Cubs, acquired Sammy Sosa from the White Sox for George Bell, an all-star, it was a major scandal.
It looked like I was getting skinned by the Chicago White Sox, and that's what was portrayed in the media at the time also, that Larry Himes has taken a huge risk on this, and he's given up a professional hitter, an outstanding hitter, and Sammy had ended up playing in AAA the year before because he didn't stay on the Chicago White Sox club all year. So Sammy came over to our ball club. The first day Sammy arrived, he came up to me and said, boy, thank you. It looks like I feel like I've gotten out of jail, and it's great to be here with the Chicago Cubs and with you.
Sammy Sosa had finally found his baseball home in Wrigley Field, one of the true shrines of the game. It was the start of another beautiful relationship. Sammy Sosa joined the Cubs in 1992 as a 23-year-old with a passion for the game and a penchant for swinging at bad pitches. The season was washed out by injuries, but by the next year, 1993, he hit 30 home runs and stole 30 bases.
It got to where I think he could look at himself and see that, you know, he's been with some star players and see that he is a star. And I think sometimes that's what it takes for a young guy to, you always see the player that you want to be like, and then I think he finally dawned on him that he is the player that he wants to be like.
Sammy Sosa had modeled his play on Roberto Clemente as a kid and now wore the great man's number, 21, and played his position, right field. San Pedro de Macorís was now in the record books for producing the most major leaguers per capita of any town in the world. Sammy Sosa started to share his success with his neighbors. His games were brought in by satellite, and the local players started to imitate him. In 1995, Sammy rejoined the 30-30 club with 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases. But there were grumblings that he was a selfish player.
What I like about Sammy is he had goals, and I think that every player should. And most players don't have goals because they don't want the challenge of having a goal. And Sammy is a guy that came out, and this came out with that 30-30 year that he had, and he wanted to get his 30 stolen bases and 30 home runs, and it was an all-time Cub record.
There's the drive, way back.
In the 1996 season, he hit 40 home runs in 2/3 of a season before breaking his wrist. His brilliance was on display for all to see.
It's been a long time coming for Sammy.
In 1996, Sosa hit 40 home runs, and he played in only a little more than 120 games that year. So if you extrapolated that out and say he missed 40 games and had 40 home runs, in retrospect, you could say, hey, you know, maybe he was announcing then that he was going to be a challenger.
By now, the one-time wild stallion had become a content family man. There were 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. The relatives all lived with them, and wife Sonia was there to keep Sammy focused through the ups and downs of baseball.
On the days that things don't go as well, he comes home relaxed, and he thinks about what he did, and he tries to do better the next day. And that's where I come in, and let him know that it's nothing. The important thing is what you're going to do tomorrow. Forget about today. The important thing is that tomorrow, when you arrive at the ballpark, you review and try to do your best.
Although Sammy had been clipping along at about $5 million a year, he was lagging behind the game's superstars. In 1997, the Cubs agreed to pay him $42 million for 4 years. Even though he'd led the league in strikeouts, he was a huge favorite with the fans and had his own personal cheering section over his shoulder in right field.
Probably people see me the way that I swing, but it's still the same swing. When I'm be patient, the only thing that I do, I just more relax and trying to make contact. But, you know, when I'm trying to put everything, I go out of control, but, you know, still the same swing.
He truly has financial security after signing that major contract. That he can be more patient at the plate. The rap on him has been always that he was not patient enough at the plate, that he swung at everything.
Sammy helped to build a shopping center in San Pedro de Macorís. It was named 3030 to acknowledge what were believed to be his crowning seasons. Those thoughts would prove premature. After a slow start in the 1998 season, while Mark McGwire and Ken Griffey Jr. were building their runs at the record for homers, Sosa stunned baseball with 20 home runs in the month of June alone, a record. And unlike his rivals, he actually seemed to be having a good time.
Oh, baby, look at that ball rocket out of here!
In June, he had simply put the greatest month of home run hitting that anyone has had in 123 years of Major League Baseball.
I also think the fans in Chicago really helped. They're such great fans, and they so love Sammy Sosa. I think he's really got caught up. I think they fueled him in June when he went on that 20 home run binge. I think it helped him.
For baseball people who'd been watching Sammy a while, it was simply a case of waiting for the summer to reach Chicago.
He's always good in June. I mean, if you look at his stats in the past, he's kind of, you know, he knows slow starts usually for him because of the cold weather in Chicago. That's always expected. But I think if you look back at his history, the month of when the weather starts warming up, June, July, he gets pretty hot. And when he gets hot, I mean, they come in bunches.
The chase was on. McGwire and Sosa took their act back and forth across the country.
He is the man in United States. I am the man in Dominican Republic.
Their cheerful and heroic competition seemed to be a tonic for the whole nation.
At long last, something brought us around the warming glow of television that was happy. Mark McGwire said, "This is fun. I'm not whining, I'm not complaining, this is fun." Sammy Sosa, every other word out of his mouth is, "I love this country." Country cordially reciprocates, they love him.
Next mayor of Chicago.
Sosa's fireworks helped the Cubs into a fight for a wild card berth in the playoffs. But he seemed to be just the nice guy who pushed Mark McGwire to greatness. He hit a pair of quiet home runs in Pittsburgh at the beginning of September, but all eyes were on McGwire.
First pitch, rocket deep toward left. He did it! He did it!
The night Mark McGwire broke through the season record of 61 home runs set by Roger Maris of the Yankees in 1961, Sammy Sosa was just a featured cheerleader, gracious and in second place. After sitting stuck on home run number 58 for what seemed an eternity but was actually only 6 days, Sosa spoke up for himself with 4 home runs in 3 days against the Milwaukee Brewers.
Swung on, there she goes! Number 62! Move over, Big Mac, you got company!
He, too, had 62 home runs. Sammy Sosa, too, was an immortal. McGwire had been first, but it was no sure thing he would be best. It was once again a race. Who would be the king of baseball?
Baseball has been very, very good to me.
And Sammy Sosa has been very good to baseball.
Sosa drives one, deep left field. If it's fair, it's going to be a grand slam. That ball is gone. Grand slam, number 63 for Sammy Sosa.
He is welcome in an era where at least one sport seems to go on strike each year, and pro athletes are described as selfish, greedy, and complaining. He can't wait to play and runs out to right field each inning. At Sammy Sosa Day in Wrigley Field, as the Cubs and their fans honored Sammy and all the Sosas, he couldn't wait to say thank you.
For all Latin American people that have been supporting me in 1998. Especially defending Chicago. 1998, it's been unbelievable. Chicago, I love you.
If there hadn't been a game, he might have told everyone thank you in person. It's a special brand of baseball that comes from a special part of the world.
The great story in baseball right now is the discovery of this huge talent pool of Hispanic players. Baseball is not just a pastime in the Dominican Republic. It is the great ladder of upward mobility, and it's taken very seriously and played very well indeed.
Each of his games is now an event back home in the Dominican Republic. People vie for invitations to the home of Lucrecia Sosa to watch her baby play baseball.
I had a conversation the other day with a guy in the Dominican Republic, and I said, well, how are things going down there? And he says, well, you know, people are just going crazy with Sammy Sosa. And I said, well, I mean, how big is he down there? Do you think that he's, you know, bigger than the Pope? And he says, well, let me tell you something, Omar. He says, I think he's leading the Pope right now. That's pretty big.
As Babe Ruth said when informed he made more money than the president, he's having a better year. Dominican communities around the United States have kept the flag factories working full-time.
He's basically a national treasure. He's transcended. He's not a only baseball guy. I think he's a symbol of what Dominicans like to think is good.
And he has continued a long tradition among players from the Dominican Republic of giving back to the country.
And you have Pedro Martinez and his brother Ramon, who go around their little town of Monoyabo, and they go and they built a church, and they built 2 schools and a daycare center and all sorts of athletic facilities. They've given back. Sosa, I mean, there was a time he just all of a sudden heard, well, they don't have computers for schools, bought a mass of computers and shipped them down to the president's palace so they could be distributed in schools.
But all the testimonials in the world don't count for much when you're slumping. Sammy didn't get a hit in 21 straight at-bats.
They both realize that people are coming to the park, standing up every time they come to the plate for one reason. They want to see them hit the ball out of the park. That naturally takes a player out of his swing a little bit. And I think Sammy, when he was in San Diego and then when he came home over the weekend, he definitely was trying to hit too many home runs, trying to please the crowd, and it got him out of his game.
Finally, he got a hold of a couple on a sunny afternoon in Milwaukee the last week of the season. With a handful of games left, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were once again dead heat.
The baseball record book is sort of unforgiving. It lists the guy who has the most home runs in a season. And unfortunately, second best is sometimes forgotten.
It was great to me and Mark pass the mark that we need to pass and give where we want to give. And now, from now on, whatever happens is a gift.
Swung on, belted, deep left center. Sosa did it again.
There's an overused sports cliche. It's too bad one of them has to lose. In this epic race between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, a tie would enable both men to win. Regardless of the outcome, though, the biggest winners of all have been millions of fans, and most of all, the sport itself. Baseball may never again see a two-man spectacle like the one in the summer of '98, when the Mark and Sammy show knocked them dead in ballparks across America. Tomorrow on Biography. Actress Mariel Hemingway will be here to introduce a special world premiere biography of her celebrated grandfather. Ernest Hemingway was a 20th century Renaissance man, writer, adventurer, war hero. Ernest Hemingway on Sunday. And I'll be back again next Saturday with another edition of Biography This Week. For A&E, I'm Karen Stone. Thanks for watching.